We're kicking things off with one very slick Pontiac Catalina drop top, a long-term build pieced together by Lloyd and the team at Magoos Street Rods.
The Pontiac project originally came about with a phone call from a guy saying he'd seen a car in America and was keen to import it and have it rebuilt. And did we do project management? And I explained that was the whole concept of how we run the workshop. So from that point, the relationship was established. We had the car assessed in America, then had it transported, shipped out, and we've handled the whole process from literally from purchase through to registration, completion and delivery. This will be the longest build that we've ever done. It was well over 10 years in the build, and that was really by the owner's request. It's been a bit of a hobby for him, and whilst he's absolutely passionate about the car, he's never been in a rush to have it done, and obviously, like with everyone, it's had to work in with budget as well.
Good things take time, it would seem. Growing up, owner Martin was no stranger to American cars. His dad piloted a 352-powered custom line, and his uncle a 64 Pontiac. But it was many moons later and an act as simple as the purchase of a Hot Wheels toy car that would set the ball rolling on the build of this, the full-scale version. After many hours trawling through American classifieds, Martin found a car he was looking for. Or so he thought. Despite commissioning an independent inspection, the Catalina would arrive in New Zealand flagged as damaged.
It was a typical East Coast car. We thought, having been a convertible, it may not have been used on the salt roads over on the East Coast, but in fact it had been. So it necessitated a total strip down, and it's been a chassis up rebuild on the car.
While technically the Catalina does retain much of what it left Pontiac's Kansas City plant with, you won't need your rocket science degree to determine that the big GM convertible is rather enhanced. Yes, that's the factory 389 cube small block sitting there, but it's been lightly warmed over and not so lightly detailed. What doesn't need to be seen now isn't. Something that can be said for that smoothed out engine bay. Heck, it's something that could be said for the entire car.
He gave us pretty much a free hand in the design of the car, so we were involved in that. I mean, obviously he was included in picking colours and that sort of thing, but the general concept for how to build the car sat with us. So for example, the cleaned out engine bay, that was our idea, which we pitched to him, and same with the upholstery design. And the Pontiac had always been a favourite of his. So what he wanted was a car that was basically stock, but that stood out as being different. It's almost like a contemporary street machine. I mean, it's certainly not a muscle car, although I think it's a great example of the styling that went on in the mid-60s. I mean, the Pontiac was unique because of the Coke bottle style grille. With the paint and what have you, we've tried to highlight the styling effects of the car without actually modifying the body at all, other than internally with the likes of the engine bay.
Where things first clearly deviate from factory is the suspension. Given the long-term build, it's a fairly early ride-tech airbag setup that drops the big poncho over the staggered billet specialties rolling stock. Magoos' son Nathan, aka Von Marco, gets the credit for the custom redesign of the factory's interior, a key feature of any drop-top car.
I think to me one of the most important things, whether we're building a 32 Ford or a 66 Pontiac or whatever, is the stance of the car. It's got to be a little bit different. I mean, all those cars originally were built, probably to be fair, to be a bit more practical for daily runners for people. But a hot rod or a street machine, the stance is the first thing that people notice. That's highlighted by the colours and the wheels that you pick to get the overall look. That's your first impressions. And then you flow from there into what's in the interior, and of course when people open the hood to see what's under there. But most of the time people don't see what's under the hood. So that initial look, does it grab you when you very first see the car? Does it jump out? In a sea of other cars, does it stand out and make a statement? To me, those little details, the things that people can look at a car and then come back and look at it again and suddenly notice, oops, that's a little bit different to the last one I saw. They're critical with building a car, and that's what makes the difference. I mean, there's hundreds or thousands of hot rods and street machines out in New Zealand, but what sets them apart is that detail and just the attention to the little things. And as I say, many of those things will just go unnoticed initially, but it's a compilation of all those little details added together that makes the difference on the end product.
With the Catalina now at the conclusion of its 18-year slow burn build and nothing left to do but put miles on the odometer and smiles on the owner, it's safe to say the Magoos Street Rods team have found themselves pretty attached to the old girl. But the biggest reward is seeing a long-term dream finally realised.
What we're trying to do, you could say that we're building cars as our core business, but in reality I think it's bigger than that. And in the instance of this car, for example, from his father and his uncle having cars when he was just young, through to buying a Hot Wheels Pontiac, this is making his dream come true.